everybody, and welcome to Break Time Conversations, a YouTube channel where I have conversations around education. I have been a teacher all of my life, and along my wonderful journey, I have met so many interesting and inspiring people who are doing such amazing things. And so I decided to document my conversations with them here so that you too can hear their stories and the awesome work that they do. I'm here today with Srishti Sehgal. She's a learning nerd, a designer, and a researcher. I discovered her on LinkedIn. I started seeing her beautifully curated posts, and I'm not a designer by any means, but I just love how your posts look and the what they convey. So her background is she's an industrial designer by education, and she found her way into the world of learning through toys and tools. And this is what got her interested in learning design. Shrishti, thank you so much for being here. And we just want to know more about how you moved from being an industrial designer to what you call a learning nerd and a designer and a researcher. So the stage is yours.
Thank you so much for having me, Anupa. It's absolute pleasure to be here. I think a little bit about me. I think both my school and college have been quite radical as far as learning goes. I went to a CBSE school in Delhi, but there was not a lot of focus on just studies, which was quite different and refreshing. And even back home, that was not like the focus was on more learning holistically rather than just looking at marks. And I think that to some degree shaped very fundamentally how I look at learning at large. And I went to design school, which you spoke about a little bit. So design school is also quite different in the way that as an education system, right, there are no exams per se. A lot of it is to do with like you doing stuff and presenting and getting graded on that. So it's like really learning by doing. We don't have classes like in the very conventional way, right? So I think a lot of that shaped to some degree my love for learning. Fun fact, I also come from a family of 4 generations of educators on my dad's side, so I'm sure that has something to do with this. But yeah, I mean, I think when I went to design school, I fundamentally just wanted to be a problem solver. And somewhere along the way, I discovered the space of learning. This one project, which now I consider quite pivotal in my journey, which is when we ended up creating toys for kids. And in the process of doing that project, I ended up talking to a lot of parents, a lot of students, a lot of teachers. And I was just like, okay, this space is interesting for me, and let me try and explore this a little bit more. So I ended up, working a little bit in the not-for-profit space, worked primarily as a researcher, as a user researcher when I started working, and more recently have sort of shifted to working as a learning experience designer. So yeah, that's been my journey, and it's super fun to be here. I think at a fundamental level, I love learning myself. I love learning new things, and that influences what I do to a large degree. So besides like what I do for work, I'm into fitness. I love cooking. I keep trying to learn new and different things, which may or may not relate to what I'm doing, but somehow they always find their way back.
So cool. I love it. And you're so lucky to have had the education that you had. Uh, because most of us just went to like terrible schools and had a terrible time. And one reason why I'm here is because I just don't want kids to go through what I went through. So I think all of us are on a journey and we somehow find our way. So Srishti, tell us more about your designs. I mean, like, where do you get your inspiration from? Who's your audience actually? Because I really, really love it. And I have been kind of copy and pasting it and sharing it with my teachers, hoping that they will get it, because some of them come from very like, the typical teacher, and so I was just curious to know who your audience actually is.
Sure. So, I mean, I think the reason I started writing was quite different. So it started off by something that I call the Learning Nerds Diary, where I would just sort of reflect on the things that I was learning in a week, and just trying to like write about it. So it was, the format was more like informal and not so much about specific concepts in like the learning design space or like learning, but more about my personal journey and reflections as a learner and as somebody who was practicing in this space. But I think as I started writing, I was just like, okay, if I can write about all of this, let me like start writing also a little bit about learning and what I do. So that's where this whole thing started. So started like trying to think and reflect a lot about my work and how that can potentially be shared with other people. So I think the kind of people that end up now resonating with some of my writing range from like learning experience designers from like across the world to also people who are just curious about learning, right? And like teachers like yourself, or even people who work in like HR and organizational development. So it's quite a eclectic mix. And I think for me, the most interesting thing is to have such conversations and actually learn a lot from what is it that people resonate with, or what has their experience been like, or how they've connected to my writing. I think I've also been like really fortunate where a lot of my work has been translated in different languages. So somebody sends me a link and I'm just like, okay, like I have to put this on Google Translate to really understand what is it that they're saying. So I think I've been really lucky that way as well, that a lot of people have resonated with the work that I've been doing. Yeah.
That's so cool. Like I said, it's so appealing and to the eye, and I really, really love it. So have you ever I don't know if I missed that, but have you ever put together a book or anything like that? Or is it
That's
just you just post on social media?
I post on social media. I run a newsletter, and all of my writing is there on my website. But a book is on the cards. Hopefully, in the
Oh,
next 6
lovely.
months,
So nice.
I want to sort of put everything together in one place. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that'll be like a great gift to give to teachers, and yeah, that I think that's great. I think you should also like I'm just thinking of ideas, maybe little postcards that we can give to
Oh
teachers, and
yeah.
something like that. I'm forever trying to think of things that I can give to teachers, but I always wanted to be something meaningful, not just a bouquet of flowers that are going to just die in a few years, but something that they can keep and that'll remind them about what they do. And so I'm giving you ideas. So please.
I will totally take that one. I absolutely love, like, because my background is in design, I absolutely love print, like
Yeah.
working with print of any like kind. So like I've been thinking about like creating a book. I need to like chalk out and block some, like maybe take a couple of days off to just work on that.
Yeah, I know it requires a lot. I know. So, have you ever thought about doing anything for students? Because, like, I think it'll also be so great to expose them to such beautiful design because they're so used to these really bad textbooks. I mean, it's getting a little better these days, but it's still so, like, I don't know, tacky a bit. So, have you ever thought about it?
Yeah. So I think one thing that I didn't mention earlier was that my love for learning also comes from like my love for kids. I absolutely love working with kids, and a large part of my work has been with kids, ranging from like toddlers to like end of school, like the entire K-12 spectrum. And I think that's still something that really, really fascinates me. That energy that children have, I think that really fuels me. The work that I do currently at Next Leap is like more in the adult learning space. So that's been like quite an interesting challenge to take on. But I think, like you said, right, content in the very traditional sense of the word is something that's very dry. And given how much, like, our textbooks have not evolved as much as the world around us has, unfortunately, right? So on one hand you have like these interactive videos where you can choose the path, and on the other hand the books pretty much look the same as they did many years back. So I think that is something that we need to really like up our game there. And I know that there are a bunch of folks who are working in that space, but I think just visualizing content and being able to visualize things. That was something that I used a lot when I was like, back in school and trying to learn something. I would always like end up making flowcharts and like trying to put things down on paper. But I think that's something that can also be like used as techniques that kids can learn these days, so that the way that they are learning is something that can also be more meaningful and be more rewarding for them also.
Yeah, I think that'll be a great idea too. So for those of us who are not very creative, if you can have like some templates or something that, something. I feel like this talk is only me giving you ideas right now.
No, I mean, I think there's this book that called Creative Confidence, which I read a while back, and I think in that talks about one basic thing that there are some people who think they're creative and others that don't, but that's actually not the case. And I think same goes for drawing. There are some people who might be able to draw better than others, but I think everybody at a fundamental level, you can draw, whether it's stick figures, whether it's bubbles. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody but you, because I think that, like, by making your learning and whatever you're learning visible, or if you're a teacher, if you help your students make what you're learning visible, that just makes learning like completely like different than what it is today, right? Otherwise it's just like you're constantly trying to visualize in your own head. But the minute you put pen to paper and try to put it in a different form than what it exists, like not words, right? That's when it becomes a lot more interesting, because you're bringing your own element into whatever you're learning. And I think that's what everybody is excited by, right? That's what makes us unique.
Yeah, absolutely. So I discovered how to draw when I became a preschool teacher. Till then, it was always, the mountains and the sun, that typical drawing. And I had gotten it into my head that I cannot draw. So I didn't even try. But as a preschool teacher, I was forced to, put stuff on my walls and make my bulletin boards. And so that's when I discovered that I could draw. Like you said, stick figures, but cute stick figures, something that kids love. But anyway, Srishti, thank you so much. It has been such a delight talking to you. And for those who are listening, I'll put all her links down in the description box, and you can check out her stuff and her story. And when she has any new announcements about that book that you were talking about, we hope that we'll be able to hear it on LinkedIn or whatever. And so thank you once again for being here, Srishti.
It was lovely being here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and bye for now.